To begin with, let's understand what really is going on out there as far as the threat landscape is concerned. What is getting attacked, who's attacking it. That's something that we need to really understand to really get a grip on what really is happening out there and what we need to worry about as well, right? So the first point, which speaks about the APT groups, which are nothing but the state-sponsored hackers. These are the most sophisticated sort of groups out there because they have access to the latest malware, the latest breach tactics, and these are very evolved hacking groups which are out there. And most of them are supported by certain states, either officially or unofficially. They're financed by them, they're backed by them with these labs where the research is going on is all funded by certain states, right? So what typically happens is in a situation where there's a geopolitical tension between different states, these are the actors who jump in and sort of carry out cyber attacks against each other, right? So these groups are evolving and collaborating. By that I mean that there is a huge investment that is coming in terms of the funding, in terms of the R&D efforts, and a lot of these APT groups, which are across certain geographies belonging to different countries, they're collaborating with each other in the sense that they're sharing malware, they're sharing data dems, they're sharing stolen data, there's stolen information, and there's this real-time exchange that is taking place out there. So this is leading to a more increase in sophistication, and this is also adding another layer of intrigue, so that it's making it very difficult to detect which particular group is behind which particular attack, so to say. Again, no prizes for guessing the second point out there, which is that the government agencies are really on the radar. This has been happening for a while now. These efforts have intensified since the COVID sort of pandemic took center stage sometime last year. So what really is going on, if we wish to understand here, is that a lot of government agencies which were at the forefront of this effort to sort of fight against COVID have all been targeted by the hackers, primarily to extract a lot of information from citizens and citizen groups, information belonging to government sort of agents and people who are involved in this particular fight against COVID. The hackers saw this as an opportunity to sort of leverage the confusion and the large scale disruption that had happened with people working from home. They didn't know when they were going to get back to office. There was a lot of remote management of infrastructure taking place. So hackers used this sort of opportunity to strike, and they were able to sort of leak out a lot of information which they're currently using to carry on these cyber attacks against critical infrastructure and sort of businesses which are out there. And again, the third point about ransom, yes, it is the ransom, the cost per GB of data. I'm going to be sharing some more information on that. Is again rising, which is a huge concern again for all of us, because every single successful cyber attack that happens, by that I mean that where there is a ransom that exchanges hands, where ransom is paid to a hacker group or groups out there to release that particular data, leads to actually more cyber attacks happening in the future, because this money is invested by these hackers to carry out more attacks in the future, and also to develop better ransomware and things like that. The fourth point about malware launchpads, these are nothing but botnets and other infrastructure that the hackers maintain primarily to strike at targets like critical infrastructure, like businesses, manufacturing, and what have you. So what really happens in this particular instance is that earlier we were seeing that botnets were located in remote areas of countries where there was some connected infrastructure, like renewable energy projects which were managed remotely, and where there was a lot of IoT being deployed, and they were getting hacked and converted into botnets and used to sort of carry out DDoS attacks against critical infrastructure and other businesses out there, right? But now what we're seeing is there's botnets which are operating out of phones which have been hijacked, mobile phones and mobile devices, digital devices which have been hijacked, and these botnets are slowly moving and sort of converging on urban areas, right? This becomes a huge point of worry for all of us, because once these botnets enter urban areas, then you will have a sudden rise in the number of botnets, because the number of devices is more, and it will be very hard to detect them as well in an environment where there is like a galaxy of devices, so to say, out there. This is again a worrying concern for us, which we have been observing for a while. It's intensifying as of now as a trend. Then H1 of this year, or rather H1 of most of the years that we have been monitoring, usually belongs to sort of new malware. That's the trend that we have been seeing. And H2 of any particular year usually is where the variants are released. So it's a typical cycle that we have seen. Again, it's nothing, it is worrying, of course, but it's not a huge sort of problem at this point in time. But then again, the number of variants that we have seen this year is slightly higher than what we have been seeing last year, which is again a problem that probably could arise in the near future. Again, democratization of cyber attacks. By that, what we mean is that earlier, these cyber attacks were linked to or were perpetrated by very few groups who had access to these sophisticated tools, right? But today, because of these tools and these malware becoming available to these other agencies and these other groups and individuals, so everyone has sort of jumped into the fray. Just to give an example, for instance, there are pirates who are operating botnets and participating in large-scale cyber attacks against critical infrastructure, financial services, stock exchanges, and other such important digital infrastructure that's out there. And this democratization means more participants will come in. And again, it will be very difficult to actually figure out where exactly these attacks are coming from and what are the kind of motivations that are driving these particular attacks. And again, with the collaboration levels that we're seeing, it's only a matter of time before we have some very high levels of disruption happening because of these actors acting together, right? Again, those are the two cities that we've seen from where there's a huge volume of malware that we've tracked back to, which are coming in. One is from Russia and the other is from North Korea, of course. And there are certain groups or rather clusters of APT groups, again, the state-sponsored hackers. They are using this particular malware that's coming in from these cities and carrying out some very sophisticated cyber attacks, primarily directed against critical infrastructure. That's something we'll see in a subsequent slide. And again, the lowering of the geopolitical threshold. This is a point that requires a bit of explanation, so let me try. So what really is happening is earlier, for a geopolitical attack to happen, for an APT group to be triggered or to be pushed to carry out a sophisticated cyber attack, usually there used to be some geopolitical back and forth happening. By that I mean that there was some clashes at the border, or maybe there was a disagreement on a certain issue due to sharing of natural resources or something. And then you would have this back and forth happening. Like we have seen in the Middle East, for instance, there are two countries who have been carrying out attacks against their water treatment facilities sometime in from mid to early 2020 onwards, sorry, last year that is. So earlier these hackers used to wait, or rather the state-sponsored hackers used to wait for a major event to happen before they strike, right? But that is gone now. Even sporting events where these countries are clashing, which is something we saw very recently as last Sunday, where there was a sporting event which is currently going on in UAE, and we had hackers from two countries which were participating were actually carrying out these cyber attacks against each other. So the thresholds have come down now. Even sporting events and maybe some other sub-geopolitical events which are happening could actually lead to a trigger for a cyber attack. And the last point there, again, a very important one for businesses. By dead drops, what we mean is that there are disgruntled employees, or there are folks who are not happy with certain aspects of businesses out there, and they're carrying information on privileges and other confidential information, and they're dumping it on places like the dark web and certain other forums, from where hackers are accessing this data and then using it to target these very businesses, right? So we call them dead drops, which is something very common in espionage. But the significance of this is that this particular occurrence is also, or this particular trend rather, is also leading to a large volume of cyber attacks actually coming in, or rather this is leading to hackers actually carrying out a lot of these attacks, wherein these insiders or disgruntled insiders are actually collaborating willingly or otherwise to help hackers carry out these attacks as a matter of getting revenge or something like that.